It happened in December of 1980, when Los Angeles was already wrestling with an image of rising crime, economic struggle, and a nightlife that sometimes blurred the line between glamour and danger. But what happened inside that Bob's Big Boy late one night wasn't a robbery gone wrong in the traditional sense. It became one of the deadliest and most shocking crimes in the city's restaurant history. The Bob's Big Boy on La Cienega was a staple of the neighborhood. It had the familiar mid-century diner charm that the chain was known for, complete with the retro neon and the welcoming atmosphere where employees and regular customers knew each other by name. Families ate there, groups of friends stopped in after movies, and staff worked long shifts just trying to make an honest living. But on December 14, 1980, all of that would be ripped apart by a pair of gunmen, and a crime that no one who survived would ever forget. It was just after 2 a.m. when the restaurant was closing down for the night. 9 employees were wrapping up, cleaning tables, and preparing for closing duties. At the same time, 2 customers were heading out, finishing their late-night meal. That's when 2 armed men forced their way inside, holding everyone at gunpoint. Their names were later revealed as Ricardo Rene "Ricky" Sanders and Franklin Freeman Jr. They weren't strangers to trouble, and this was a planned robbery. But what unfolded went far beyond a simple theft. The gunmen quickly corralled everyone into the walk-in freezer, a cold, tight space that instantly turned terrifying. In total, 11 people, employees and customers alike, were trapped inside. Sanders and Freeman demanded that everyone hand over valuables, wallets, watches, jewelry, anything of worth. Scared and with guns pointed at them, the victims complied without resistance. But instead of just grabbing the loot and fleeing, the assailants made a decision that would turn this into what became known as the Bob's Big Boy Massacre. In that freezer, Sanders and Freeman opened fire. Bullets ripped through the small space, striking almost everyone inside. 3 people were killed instantly, another victim would later die of injuries months afterward, and several others were badly wounded. One survivor was left with permanent impairments from the gunshots. It was an act so brutal and senseless that even seasoned police officers who responded to the scene struggled to comprehend what had just happened inside such a familiar and friendly restaurant. The surviving victims provided the key to the investigation. In the chaos of the shooting, some managed to get a look at their attackers and later gave detailed descriptions. Soon, investigators pieced together that this was not a random attack. A third person had helped set it up. A former Bob's Big Boy employee named Carlitha Stewart. She had insider knowledge of the restaurant's operations and hours. According to court testimony, she provided the information that allowed Sanders and Freeman to time their robbery for when the restaurant was closing and cash would likely still be on hand. By 1982, the case had gone through trial, and the courts handed down sentences. Ricky Sanders received the death penalty. Franklin Freeman Jr. was sentenced to 25 years to life, and Carlitha Stewart was convicted of her role as an accomplice. It closed the chapter legally, but for the families of the victims and the community around La Cienega, the pain lingered. What made the case so impactful wasn't just the crime itself, but the way it symbolized a darker shift in how people were feeling about safety in Los Angeles at the time. Diners like Bob's Big Boy were supposed to be neutral ground, brightly lit, family-friendly spaces where people could relax, laugh, and eat. For violence of this scale to invade such a place was deeply unsettling. The city had seen its share of robberies, but the execution-style decision to unload bullets into innocent people after compliance made this case stand out as a chilling act of cruelty. In the aftermath, the crime didn't just stay in the local headlines. National news outlets covered the massacre, and it sparked debates about law, order, and safety in America. In fact, it even inspired a TV movie in 1986 called The Right of the People, which explored the question of whether everyday citizens should arm themselves for self-defense. The crime at Bob's Big Boy was cited in the film's promotional materials as part of its inspiration. It showed how one incident in a diner could ripple out into much larger conversations about violence and justice in America. For the employees who survived, life was never the same. Imagine being a teenager or a young adult, working a part-time job at a diner, and suddenly finding yourself at the center of one of LA's deadliest restaurant crimes. Survivors carried physical scars, psychological trauma, and grief for years. For families of those who lost their lives, December of 1980 became a month forever associated with heartbreak instead of holidays. Even decades later, the case has resurfaced in the news. Ricky Sanders, who sat on death row for years, has recently sought resentencing, asking for his punishment to be reduced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. His legal team argued trial errors and pointed to changing policies around sentencing. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, however, has strongly opposed that idea, stating that the sheer brutality of the Bob's Big Boy massacre makes it one of the most heinous crimes in county history. As of now, the case remains tied up in legal proceedings. What makes this story still resonate in Los Angeles is how it represents a clash between innocence and violence, between the everyday and the extraordinary. People went to Bob's Big Boy for burgers and shakes, for late-night hangouts, for the comfort of routine. Nobody expected to face a nightmare in a walk-in freezer. That contrast is why people still talk about it today, why it lingers in memory, and why it's worth telling in a respectful and careful way. Walking past La Cienega today, the landscape has changed. Businesses come and go, but for those who know the story, that stretch of boulevard carries a weight. It reminds us how fragile safety can be and how one night can alter lives forever. This isn't about sensationalizing tragedy. It's about remembering the people whose lives were cut short, acknowledging the pain that rippled through the city, and recognizing how a single crime can leave marks that last generations. It's also about understanding Los Angeles, not just the glitz, the palm trees, and the Hollywood spotlight, but also the shadows where stories like this live. The Bob's Big Boy Freezer Massacre is one of those stories. It's not an easy one to tell, and it's not a glamorous one, but it's a piece of LA history that deserves to be remembered.